Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is EZCHALLEGER, and in today's upload, we're going to be discussing, as I don't really think there's an actual list here, but we will discuss the 10 hardest champions in the game, and we will also give a shout out to some honorable mentions, because I don't think there's really a right or wrong. I mean, maybe if I had Yuumi in this list, it would be wrong. But these champions, guys, on this countdown, they're the hardest to master, they have the highest skill ceiling, and there's going to be a big difference between how someone maybe plays them in, let's say, Bronze Elo, to how someone in Challenger would play them. So that's what we're basing this list on, and any ideas in the comments, any thoughts you have on the champions we mentioned, let us know down below. And we're not going to go in any particular order here. We're just going to list 10 champions, so maybe you guys in the comments can actually list your own, and we'll see who gets the most likes. Now, to make these champions, guys, easier to play for yourselves, make sure you check out the GameLeap website, because our guides, our courses, our high elo VOD analyses, they will help you play some of these champions and any champion in the game at the highest level possible. So get exclusive access by signing up to the website, and let's get into the countdown. So we'll start off by talking about some of the hardest top laners to play, and the first of these, this is Riven. Now, Riven, why is she hard to play? Because she doesn't actually do too bad in lower elos. I mean, maybe it's just because she's busted and does enjoy this meta at the moment, but the big reasons why Riven is here. The animation cancelling is not easy to do. You have to make your fingers bleed before you perfect this, and there are so many combos. Like, let's be honest, if you are a Riven main out there, there is no way you have not spent half of your life in the practice tool hitting dummies. That is just the way it is, and there's so many intricacies around matchups as well. Knowing when to use certain cooldowns and how to use them together, it's a real headache, and it takes a lot of time to get even good at this champion, not just perfect her and get great at her. So Riven is the first champion to consider. Now, the other pure top laner on this countdown, this is another one who no doubt everyone has practiced a lot in the practice tool, whether you're one-part comboing or triple barrel comboing. This, of course, is Gangplank. So for GP, I know lots of people think this champion is obnoxious because he just cues you from afar and GG. Well, that's really not the case in the majority of elos, because GP, to actually play him like Solar Barker, for example, takes thousands of hours. You don't just do it after a couple of games. And on Gangplank, one big mistake, and it probably means the lane is completely over, because you are very squishy compared to other top laners. I don't think anyone is going to be too scared of Gangplanks in lower elos, and that's probably one of the reasons why his win rates in lower elos are a lot lower than his win rates in higher elos. So Gangplank, very similar to Riven, you have to have a lot of matchup knowledge. Even the level 1 is very important in how you play it. Obviously, the barrel combos, that's probably what's going to differentiate a great GP to everyone else. So Gangplank is the other top laner to think about. Now, if we head into the jungle, we have a couple of champions here to mention. The first of these being Lee Sin. Now, I know people might say, Lee Sin, all you have to do is just kick someone into your team, which is easier said than done. Or maybe you just safeguard your AD carry and kick the Zed away. But here's the thing, guys. The difference in terms of mechanics, in terms of what is actually in a Challenger Lee Sin's toolbox compared to a Silver Lee Sin's toolbox, it is ginormous. And this is why in pro play, we're still seeing Lee Sin. Even though he's been nerfed a few times recently, he's still picked by LPL teams, by Korean teams, because those players play him at such an absurdly high level. So he may have a win rate around 46-47%, but to actually play this champion like one of the best in the world of your existence. And this probably goes for the next champion as well. If you don't one-trick this champion, there's probably no way you're going to be good at him, this being Rengar. So if you're playing Rengar in the jungle, even in the top lane, I guess we can mention here, or in the bot lane with an Ivan support, Rengar is definitely hard to master. To get your clears down pat, to understand how comboing works, how your ferocity stacks work, and even when you're skirmishing, to use brushes. I mean, that's really probably the big difference between, let's say, a player like Scrub Noob compared to someone in lower elos, just being able to kite around the enemy champions, using your passive effectively. And maybe another thing might be where you're ulting from. So lots of Rengar players maybe in lower elos will be ulting from obvious positions. If you can actually track where the enemy carries are moving, maybe they shove a side wave, try to think about where they're going to go and you can catch them out. But it doesn't really matter what tips I give you here in this video, there's no way you're going to be able to master Rengar and play him at a high level quickly. So Rengar is another one of these champions who's very difficult to get a hold of. Now, moving on to the mid lane here, we have 4 champions who have got to be considered as some of the hardest champions to master. So let's see if you guys can guess them. Now, this first champion has a half brother, and for lots of players who pick this champion, well, let's just say they're kind of notorious for going 0 and 10 and running it down during the early stages of a game. This, of course, is Yasuo. So yes, Yasuo mains may get a bad rep, but if you guys were to go and watch PZ Zhang, who's a high elo Korean Yasuo one-trick, compare him to the gold Yasuo who just went 1 and 10 in your rank game. There is going to be a huge difference, but maybe not so much mechanically, because I think most Yasuo players understand what's up. They understand some combos, but it's really about when you're using your abilities, when you actually decide to go in. Maybe there's a couple of combos that are very hard to execute, like the Airblade combo, for example, but for the most part, Yasuo's understand how his kit works. But the big difference is the actual matchup knowledge in the mid lane, and also just mid lane macro, because the higher you go, if you don't manage a minion wave properly, if you don't respect where the enemy jungler might be, if you don't just relax for a little bit, I think lots of Yasuo mains, just because they don't have that patience and actual awareness of what's around them, they treat it like a 1v1 and a 1v1 only, they do end up running it it down an awful lot. And that's probably the biggest difference between PZ Zhang and other high elo Yasuo mains compared to all the others. Just being aware of when to go in, how to go in, based on the enemy champion and also the map and what it's telling you. And of course there are so many combos, so Yasuo has to be in here. So if Yasuo is the first mid laner, what about the other three? Well, the first of these bad boys, this is Aurelion Sol. And you might be thinking, oh my god, what a brain dead champion. You know, you just shove minion waves and you roam around the map. No. Aurelion Sol, there's a lot of intricacies. Whether it be a bit like Yasuo and I guess the other champions, in terms of matchups in the mid lane, how to actually manage minion waves effectively, and there's lots of tricks you can do with your E when you're roaming around the map, when to actually use your spells, certain combos with your ultimate and your stun, and it's not like there's a bunch of information or guides on Aurelion Sol out there, or montages to actually watch and learn from. So in terms of the resources available, and in terms of the actual champion's kit, I think Aurelion Sol is easily one of the hardest champions to actually master on League of Legends. And the same goes for this next champion, who isn't really picked that much, and there isn't going to be too much information on, but probably more than Aurelion Sol, this being the Emperor of Shurima, Azir. And when you play against good Azir players, it just feels like you're getting suffocated. Like you actually just can't breathe in the mid lane. Now this might be matchup dependent, of course. If you're playing Zoe into Azir, going to be different compared to if you're playing someone like Ari into Azir, because that matchup for Ari does not sound that fun. So any champion that Azir can actually get to level 2 first in, yes, he's going to feel very oppressive. But that is only if that player knows how to play Azir. And guess what? Most people don't. Most people play him very scared. They think, oh, I'm a scaling champion, let's just sit back and chill. But you can't do that. If you are playing the pigeon, you have to play him like you are an emperor, because that's what he is. You have to play him in the mid lane like you own the mid lane, you own the priority, and you own the map. But like I said, lots of Azir players don't have the mechanical capacity, I guess, or experience on the champion to play him at that max potential. So lots of the time in lower elos, Azir is going to have just a worse win rate compared to higher elos because people don't know how to play him properly. And one tip that will help you guys out in lower elos when you're playing Azir, just try to make sure you always save 1 W, 1 Sand Soldier, and of course your E. This means if you do get ganked, you can get out, and remember the mid lane is not just forwards and backwards. You have the 2 river brushes, you can move around towards the raptor camps, you don't just have to run back and forward on a straight line. Use the whole of the mid lane, be aggressive, embrace the Emperor of Shurima within you. So we've had Yasuo, Aurelion Sol, we've had Azir. Well, how about another attack damage mid laner? And this one, guys, you can play her in the jungle as well. This is Qiyana. Now I remember when we made the hardest champions tier list video like 5-6 months ago, lots of people were going on about how hard Qiyana is to actually master. Now I don't think, to be honest, because there are so many Qiyana players in higher elos, I don't think she's the hardest champion maybe on this countdown to actually master, but for sure I can agree. She is certainly difficult in terms of maybe getting the hang of her. So when to use certain Ws, how to actually combo with your EQ, then you reset that Q with your W, how to use your E and your ultimate. Of course there are flash combos as well. Yes, in terms of the number of combos for sure. And if you throw Prowler's Claw into the mix as well, that adds another hotkey you have to press. So maybe one tip to playing Qiyana at a high level is to clear space around you and just land your forehead onto the keyboard. It will probably work, but no, I'm just being facetious. The champion for sure is difficult to master. It will take a lot of time in the practice tool like all of these champions, and I guess the key to playing Qiyana at the best level is to actually just know, whether that's through practice or experience, maybe a bit of both, when to use the right combo, when to use the right W, and when to actually go in as well. Playing an assassin, you don't just want to be the first one in there, unless it is like just a straight up ambush. You want to chill a little bit, wait until those key cooldowns have been used, and then bang, you go in. I'd also say here that positioning is key, actually having map awareness, not just running directly into the fight in a straight line. Try to use some flanks, try to get around the back of the enemy team, and you should be good. And also remember that Qiyana, you can hop over walls with your W as well, which is really nice. So yes, I had to put her on this countdown because of public opinion, and I can definitely argue for her being one of the hardest to master. Now the last two champions, guys, in this video, they reside in the bot lane. And I know this might be a bit contentious, but we only have one AD carry on here, and maybe you guys might be able to work out who it is. So it's not Draven, it's not Aphelios, it's not Caitlyn, it's not Samira, and of course you can make arguments for all of those champions being really difficult, but for me the hardest AD carry to actually play at a high level, this is Kalista. And let me just put it this way, if I'm not playing in Challenger, I kind of wince when I see Kalista locked in because I know that player might not be able to get the most out of the champion, and it's almost like we're at a disadvantage before we even hop onto the Rift. So all the kiting and moving, and I tell you what, once you start getting attack speed, after 2 or 3 major items, your APM has to be through the roof. So for all the boomers out there, and maybe you've even tried Kalista, you know how hard she is to play. And think about this as well, because you're not an Ezreal, you don't have a dash in your kit, your positioning has to be perfect. If you get caught out just once, and there are so many kind of like general counters to Kalista, whether it's a GP ultimate, a misfortune make it rain, there are lots of slows in the game, the cuck her passive of course, so the moving, the attacking, so you have to be super switched on and in tune with the champion to even make her work. I'm not saying like if you master Kalista you're going to win every game, that's definitely not how it works, but if you lock her in, you better have put the hours into her. So she is the only AD carry on this list, and of course let me know if you agree in the comment comment section. Now, the last champion, guys, the only support on this countdown. I know lots of people in our previous videos said maybe a champion like Bard. Even some people talked about Nami and Janna. But for me, the hardest support in terms of, I guess, skill ceiling, like if I was to pick Core JJ to play a champion, and all the supports in terms of being OP are as OP as one another, I would love to see him play Thresh. Because for me anyway, Thresh is the most versatile support in the game. And I think we've all had that Thresh player who might not lantern in the right position, he might miss every hook, and instead of just flaying the enemy champions, he decides to go for that random hook. Like even just being confident to flash flay, some Threshers get it wrong, or if you land a hook, use your ultimate first before flaying, because you put your box down, then you flay them into one of the sides of the box. Like even just knowing that, I've seen high elo Threshers not even do this, and also stuff up a bunch of combos. And if you guys were to check the win rates at the moment of Thresh, in lower elos, let's say maybe like bronze and maybe silver, Thresh only has like a 46-47% win rate, but if you go to somewhere like maybe Master and above in Korea or Challenger worldwide, it's well above 50%. Now why is that? That's just because for the majority of players, they probably just don't have the time to perfect this champion and understand his kit like the best players in the world do. And as for the honorable mentions, guys, these are champions who definitely could have been on this countdown. We had Draven and Aphelios and Caitlyn for AD carries. We had Akali and Twisted Fate for the mid lane. We had Fiora for the top lane. We also had Bard and we had Nidalee for the jungle. If you think there are other champions who should be credited in terms of being very hard to master, I'd love to know what you have to say. Let me know in the comment section. And of course, if you do enjoy our content, make sure you leave a like down below and hit that subscribe button. And until our next Season 12 upload, this has been EZCHALLEGER. Peace.